Hi, I'm Michael Wargo, team pilot with FMS, and today this video is going to go along with my the article series on how to get started in RC. This video is going to be all about your first flight, how to prepare for it, how to make that first flight, and how to be safe. This is very important. Although repairs are fairly simple with these models, takeoff has to be controlled. Landing is not optional. The plane has to come down. So we want to try and help you prepare for this and to prepare for some of the nerves and some of the anxiety that you're going to experience. All right, the first thing you're going to have to learn, obviously, is how to taxi and turn the aircraft. If you recall, what's actually turning the aircraft on the ground is the rudder. The rudder is what's steering it, just like a car. And it's the only part of your flight that the rudder is going to do any steering, of course. Now, this video presumes that you've gone through all the basics and gotten on the flight simulator or are possibly out here with somebody on the buddy box. But if you're going to take your first flight by yourself, here are the rules. Rule number one, a really nice, large area, as large as you can find. It's not always practical, not always possible, but find the largest open area you can. Trees are not your friend. You're very focused on the aircraft, so it's very easy to fly into an obstacle because it comes up on you very fast because your focus is very spot oriented. The second thing is make sure you have a little distance, and in this case, a short enough grass. This has kind of small wheels. This is an FMS Ranger, and it's the wheels are a little smaller. So the grass has to be a little lower, or off of concrete. You can fly it in a parking lot if you'd like. So we need a nice long area to take off and, of course, to land. The next big rule is make sure when you first get it started, you are really flying straight, that you can see straight in front of you. The plane isn't canted towards the left or the right. And as we start this initial takeoff roll, one of the biggest mistakes I see pilots make is they do not give it enough power to get off the ground. So we're going to make sure that we don't jam the power to 100% because that could be a little unnerving when it lifts off the ground. Do not pull on the elevator too hard. The plane should take off by itself. It should kind of lift off. And once it does, don't panic and just let the plane fly straight for a little bit. And make sure your power setting is at a nominal level. After you leave the ground, you can back the power off a little bit. So here's what that takeoff is going to look like. Have enough power and just let it lift off by itself. Now the wind or other things kind of turned that plane a little bit to the right. It wanted a weather vane into the wind. But once you get aloft, all you need to do is focus on keeping the wings level. Very small movements, very small turns. At this point, you should have some of the basics down for a turn. And as you can see, I'm trying to fly the plane very controlled. Keep it tighter in front of you. Don't let it fly too far away. Do not fly behind you. That is an important rule at every aircraft club. Do not fly behind you. So all I'm doing right now is trying to get a feel for the aircraft, making slight banks left, and leveling off the wings. I'm only turning for one reason, to keep the plane in sight and make sure it's not too far away. Watch your power. If the power is too fast, the plane gets a little jumpy. Once you get the plane to altitude, most planes will require a little bit of trim. So if the plane is fighting you a little bit, like it's wanting to list to the left, or it's wanting to list to the right, or it's wanting to climb, or it's wanting to dive, you're going to have to, hopefully you'll be out with someone. It's always much safer to do. And if you maybe can't get your fingers off of the flight controls, someone next to you can push a little bit of trim. In other words, little right trim, little left trim, on the ailerons if the plane is listing. If the plane is climbing, you want to take the elevator trim and push forward on it a couple of times so the plane stays level. And it's pretty simple. You just keep pushing the trim tabs until the plane is flying straight and level at about somewhere between a third and a half throttle, which is where I am now. I'm flying third to half throttle, and the plane is flying hands off. Right now it's climbing a little bit, so I'll put another click of down trim, and it should level off. Now, the other and most important tip for this flight, besides getting used to it, is you need to be, long before your flying time is up, you need to start practicing what I'm doing right now, which is flying low over the runway. You need to learn how to find the runway. It's going to be the hardest thing you do. Hopefully you've practiced on the simulator. But this is normally fairly difficult for people just starting. The technique for landing the very first time without any help will be just slightly different than it is for landing once you get experienced. But you can see what I'm doing is I'm practicing flying down the runway and flying away. Okay, if you're flying up here and flying around, the first thing that you want to do to prepare for landing, or even those first practice landing, is get down. Bring the plane down to about 15 feet, maybe 20 feet, and keep it at that level. It's still high enough that you're fairly safe, but practice flying straight down the runway and see if you can get it to do what I did just now, which is fly over the runway straight. After you've done that a couple of times, after you've flown down the runway a few times, what I'm going to suggest then is fly out fairly far, bank the plane to where you're looking at the runway, or point the nose at yourself, and then put it about the same height, and then just cut the power and pull up on the nose just a little bit, and just keep that nose up. Now, obviously, I'm a very experienced pilot, and I knew just how much elevator to hold to keep the nose level or pointed up a little bit. And that's, of course, a skill that you're going to have to manage and you're going to have to master. But for all intent and purposes, it will not hurt you or hurt the plane the very first time to just bring the plane down. And if you're not perfect on these controls, this particular model almost wants to fly itself. As you can see, it's weather vaning. The motor isn't running at all. I'm just letting it coast and just bring the nose up a little bit. And look, it's gonna settle in. We're at a different flying location. And obviously in that great big field we were flying in earlier, there's tons of places for landing and just so much field that it can just set down anywhere. But I'm gonna take off and land in a much smaller place right now. You can see my landing strip in this location, it's just dirt, is, I don't know, maybe 50 feet or so, but you'll see the plane can be landed and taken off very comfortably in this space. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep this plane in a very small area here to show you that the plane, you don't need a huge area. Soccer field, something like that is just plenty, more often than not. This is obviously a nice place to take off. And as you can see, we don't need to fly very far to have a lot of fun. The whole idea is to keep it in sight. And there it is. As you can see here, there are some obstacles we need to stay away from that I'm trying to fly over to give you an idea. Down here I have a gate and a fence. And if we're going to do a landing, I need to get over that in order to get down to this little runway here. But you can see I'm practicing flying onto that runway. I have a very heavy crosswind that's going to make it a bit of a challenge to land on there. As you get better, of course, it'll be a lot easier. But I'm flying here right now just to show you that it can be taken off and landed comfortably in a pretty small area. And I'm right now just preparing for it to blow into me, which it is. So I'm lining up a little off the runway, little power. And as you can see, that plane landed in about 25 feet, and it could also take off in about 25 feet. And much less if I hit the power hard. Like from there, I can take off in probably 10 feet. And it's up and off already. Do another quick landing here. The wind's blowing it off the runway, so it's a trick. So in this case, I got to get over that. But you can see I'm just powered off. This is a very easy trainer, so very easy to fly and land.